Salem Witch Trials DNA in 2025 links accusers to modern politicians. Salem a shocking new genealogical study combining advanced DNA analysis with centuries of public records has reportedly drawn a direct line from the most infamous accusers of the 1690 to Salem witch trials to several prominent modern-day political families. The study claims that the accuser gene, a legacy of mass hysteria and power, may have persisted in American politics for over 3 centuries. The alleged discovery, according to leaks from the yet-to-be-published study, researchers used a multi-pronged approach. Genetic sequencing, they extracted and sequenced DNA from the preserved, centuries-old remains of key accusers, most notably Abigail Williams and Putnam Jr., the primary catalyst of the hysteria. Genealogical mapping, using public databases like Ancestry, Common Family Search, org. They built extensive family trees from the 17th century to the present day. Modern cross-referencing, they then cross-referenced these lineages with the publicly available genealogical data of contemporary political figures. The alleged findings: direct patrilineal and matrilineal descendants of the Salem accusers are now serving in Congress, governors' mansions, and even as high-profile political commentators. The accuser gene, a misleading but powerful metaphor. The study's lead author, a fictional Dr. Reese Thorne, is quoted as saying, "We are not speaking of a literal witch hunt gene, that's not how genetics works. But we are identifying a clear genealogical inheritance, the same bloodlines that produced individuals who wielded false accusations as a tool for social power and personal gain in 1690 to have, through the generations, consistently produced individuals drawn to the levers of political and rhetorical power." In other words, the link isn't genetic, but genealogical. The headline's power comes from suggesting that a propensity for demagoguery, scapegoating, and leveraging fear might be a dark, inherited family tradition, a historical echo chamber. The parallels drawn by the study's proponents are intentionally provocative. Then, accusations of witchcraft were used to settle land disputes, silence critics, and enforce religious conformity. Now, accusations of un-American activities, witch hunts, and partisan smears are used to discredit opponents and mobilize bases. The report suggests that the descendants have, in a sense, professionalized the tactics of their ancestors, trading the pulpit and the courthouse for the cable news desk and the congressional hearing. The inevitable scientific and historical backlash such a claim would be met with immediate and fierce criticism from multiple fronts. Geneticists would point out the impossibility of linking complex behavioral traits across 300 years through DNA. Behavior is shaped by a myriad of genes, environment, and culture, not a deterministic legacy. Historians would argue that this reduces a complex social tragedy rooted in religious fanaticism, social inequality, gender politics, and the aftermath of a brutal war to a simplistic bad blood narrative. Genealogists would question the methodology, citing the high probability of pedigree collapse, the fact that everyone with colonial ancestry is descended from a relatively small group of people, and the inevitable gaps in 17th century records. A real historian would likely comment, "This is a classic case of presentism, imposing modern concepts and values onto the past." The people of 1690 to Salem were products of their time, living in a genuine fear of the devil. To draw a direct line to modern political rhetoric, while emotionally resonant, is historically irresponsible. It tells us more about our own desire to find simple villains than it does about the actual past, the political fallout regardless of its scientific merit. The headline would have a real-world impact. Opponents of the named politicians would seize on it as proof of a corrupt and cynical lineage. Supporters would dismiss it as a witch hunt against them, ironically proving the study's point about the persistence of such language. The public would be divided, with many seeing it as a poignant metaphor for cycles of political hysteria, while others would view it as a dangerous form of character assassination based on ancestry. Conclusion: truth as a metaphor. While the headline DNA in 2025 links accusers to modern politicians is almost certainly false in a literal, scientific sense, its power lies in its metaphorical truth. The real legacy of Salem is not in our blood, but in our political and cultural memory. It serves as a permanent warning. The tools of accusation, fear, and moral panic can be wielded to devastating effect by anyone, regardless of their lineage. The story resonates because we see the patterns of Salem repeating not in our genes, but in our headlines, our social media feeds, and our political discourse. The witch hunt is a cycle we are doomed to confront, not because of who our ancestors were, but because of the timeless human vulnerabilities to fear, power, and the desire to find a scapegoat.